My name wasn't even on the guest list. That was the first thought I had when I stood in front of the grand glass doors of the Redwood Estate Hotel, alone. A valet in a white blazer looked me up and down like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't. I wasn't in designer heels. I wasn't carrying a Birkin. And I definitely wasn't smiling. But I wasn't here for the wedding. Not really. I just needed to see it once. The place. The setup. The way my father had given it all to my sister, Aubrey, on a silver platter and told me, "You're just not worth it to be there." Not worth it. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I could still hear his voice in my head, crisp and cold like the bourbon he always sipped at 5 p.m. sharp. He didn't even flinch when he said it over the phone. Aubrey's getting married into real money. It's not like you'd fit in anyway, Melanie. That was it. No fight. No apology. Just silence after that. I remember laughing quietly to myself. Not the kind of laugh that meant anything was funny, but the kind that keeps you from breaking. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just said, I understand. And I meant it. Because I did understand. They had never seen me. Not for who I was. Not for what I had built in silence, with grit under my nails and numbers running through my head like code. They saw a girl who wore secondhand clothes and lived in a modest apartment in Queens. They didn't know about the LLC, the property acquisitions, the shell companies, the way I used the family name, covertly, to buy back the very ground they'd soon be standing on. And as I turned away from that hotel door, slipping back into my car before anyone recognized me, my phone buzzed. A notification from the county clerk's office. Redwood Estate Hotel. Notice of asset seizure. Unpaid property tax liens. Official notice posted. My fingers trembled, not from fear. From adrenaline. I wasn't just attending the wedding anymore. I was about to own it. Literally. You see, for months earlier, I'd found out something my sister didn't know. The land the venue was built on hadn't been fully transferred in the last estate reshuffle. A few signatures were missing. Some filings had expired. And I, quiet little Melanie, swooped in under a trust name and bought the lien before the venue even noticed. They'd ignored the overdue taxes. I didn't. And today they were getting married on land that no longer legally belonged to the hotel. It belonged to me. And I had just signed off to let the sheriff enforce the seizure. No delay. No exceptions. No idea what was coming. They were going to walk into chaos, confused vendors, locked storage rooms, officers asking for permits, and the one person who could fix it?
Gone.
Vanished.
Me.
The day started hours earlier with a different tone. I was in my office, just a brick-walled room above a tiny flower shop in Brooklyn. Nobody knew I was quietly pulling strings on the largest real estate takedown of the year. But this wasn't just about property. This was about history. Growing up, I was always the second choice. Aubrey got ballet. I got a second-hand violin with a broken string. She got prom limos. I took the train. She got Dad's attention. I got the leftovers. I spent my whole life watching her parade around like royalty, and I stayed in the shadows, biting my tongue, learning how to survive on less.
And now?
Now I was the shadow they should have feared. I had power now, not flashy, not loud, but the kind that lives in contracts and loopholes and LLCs registered in Delaware. I'd done the work. While Aubrey curated her perfect Instagram life, I quietly took what mattered, ownership. And today, on her perfect wedding day, she would learn a brutal truth. Sometimes the one you dismiss quietly becomes the one who owns the floor beneath your feet. Literally. I left the office early. Drove by the venue just once. Watched the floral trucks pull up. Watched people in tuxedos shuffle in and out with checklists and walkie-talkies. Everything was pristine. Picture perfect. But they didn't know they were building a fantasy on sinking sand. By noon, the county's trucks rolled up. 3 men. Badges. A red tape roll. And a notice stapled to the oak gates.
Seized.
The moment they posted it, my phone blew up. First unknown numbers. Then my father. Then Aubrey. Then my cousin Lindsay, her maid of honor. Panicked voicemails flying in like birds crashing into windows. Melanie, hey, are you involved in this? What's going on? They're saying the hotel is under seizure. What the hell? Call me back. Please. I watched the screen. Didn't answer. Not yet. Let them sweat. By 1 p.m., the scene at Redwood Estate was total chaos. Guests stood outside the locked gates in designer dresses and tailored tuxedos, fanning themselves in the July heat, whispering furiously. Someone was crying near the entrance. Photographers were pacing with confused expressions. The event coordinator was on the verge of a breakdown, phone pressed to her ear, pacing in loops. And in the middle of it all, my father stood, red-faced and sweating, barking into his Bluetooth headset like a cornered executive. This is a mistake. This is a goddamn mistake, he shouted, waving a paper in the sheriff deputy's face. You can't just shut down a private event. The officer didn't flinch. Sir, we posted the seizure notice this morning. This property is no longer under the management of Redwood Estate LLC. It now falls under the ownership of, he glanced at his clipboard, Armitage Holdings Group. My pseudonym. Well, one of many. Armitage Holdings was me. Or rather, a trust one built through 2 shell companies and a silent legal firm I paid in cash. No one could trace it unless I wanted them to. Aubrey stormed out of the bridal suite, veil in hand, shouting, What does that even mean? Where am I supposed to walk down the aisle? Where are the chairs? Someone tried to calm her. A planner, maybe. Or a friend. But she smacked their hand away and kept screaming, demanding answers, as if rage could undo paperwork. From across the street, I sat inside my rental car behind tinted windows, sipping iced coffee. Watching. I shouldn't have enjoyed it. But I did. Because this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about years of being overlooked, ignored,
Mocked.
I still remembered Thanksgiving 2 years ago, how Aubrey held up her engagement ring and smirked. You still single, Mel? Don't worry. Not everyone's meant to be chosen. And my father? He'd leaned back in his chair and said, She's probably too busy with those little projects. What is it now, accounting? Or was it that failing flower shop? Everyone had laughed. Even my mother. They never knew the flower shop was just a front. That underneath it, in a secured office, I was flipping distressed properties and managing 6-figure transactions while keeping a low profile. I had clients they couldn't pronounce, assets they couldn't track. And today, I was the one in control. They just didn't know it yet. By 2 p.m., panic had reached fever pitch. The sheriff had cleared out the ballroom. Staff were being escorted off property. The cake was sitting on a folding table outside the venue, melting under the sun. Bridesmaids were crying in the parking lot. My father was on hold with his lawyer. And then he called me. Melanie. His voice cracked through the speaker. Where are you? I didn't answer at first. Let the silence stretch. Are you involved in this? He asked again. Because if you are, I swear to God. I'm not at the venue, I said flatly. I wasn't invited, remember? He was quiet for a beat. This is serious, he growled. Do you know who owns Armitage Holdings? There's no record, nothing public. The lawyer said it might be complicated. I offered with a sweet tone. He went still. You know something, he said. I know a lot of things, I said. Like how you told me I wasn't worth being at this wedding. Like how you transferred assets under shell companies thinking nobody would notice the unpaid tax bills. Like how this whole event is sitting on top of a legal house of cards. You did this, he hissed. You little. I fixed your mistake, I said calmly. I saved your reputation. Quietly. I didn't press charges for the misfiled trust documents. I could've, but I didn't. I paused, letting my voice harden. But I'm not saving this wedding.
He tried to speak.
I hung up. An hour later, I got a text from my cousin Lindsay. Everyone's panicking. We're begging the venue to open back up. Dad said they're offering triple to whoever owns the rights.
Please. Can you help?
I stared at the message. Not even an apology. Just desperation. I typed one word back.
No.
And then I turned off my phone. That night, I didn't stay in the city. I drove upstate, checked into a quiet lakefront cabin I'd bought last year under another name. It had no Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just silence. And I finally breathed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. For years, I'd let them decide my worth. Today, I'd reclaimed it. They could throw another wedding, find another venue, hire another planner. But they'd never forget the moment their perfect world collapsed because of the girl they left behind. And I wouldn't either, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just someone's sister. I was the storm they never saw coming. It was the next morning when the real fallout began. I'd just finished making coffee in the cabin, barefoot, wrapped in a hoodie, watching steam curl out the mug, when my phone buzzed back to life. I had turned it off the entire night, but I knew the moment I powered it on, the storm would come looking for me.
And it did.
37 missed calls. Dozens of messages. Most of them from numbers I didn't save anymore. One from Aubrey stood out. "You did this, didn't you? You ruined the best day of my life. I hope you're happy." No apology. Just blame.
Typical.
I scrolled past more texts. Voice notes from my aunt. A furious voicemail from my dad's lawyer. One from my mother, surprisingly short. "Call me."
Now.
I didn't. Instead, I sat on the porch overlooking the lake, feet up, letting the soft morning air settle around me. No noise. No drama.
Just peace.
But peace never lasts long when a family like mine is involved. An hour later, a black Mercedes SUV pulled up the gravel path.
Quiet. Slow.
Then parked without a word. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The door opened, and out stepped my mother. Still in her tailored pantsuit, heels crunching against the stones, hair perfectly sprayed back like always. Her lips were tight, jaw locked. But her eyes weren't angry. They were tired. She walked up to the porch and stood a few feet away from me. "You could have answered." I sipped my coffee. "You could have invited me." Her lips pressed tighter. "It wasn't my decision." "No," I said, "but you agreed with it." Silence stretched between us. "I didn't think it mattered to you anymore," she said quietly. "You were always so distant." I laughed once dryly. "You all made sure of that." She sat down on the edge of the porch, careful not to wrinkle her suit. "I didn't know you owned Armitage Holdings," she said after a pause. "Your father is losing his mind trying to figure it out. He thinks it's a competitor. A hostile takeover." "It's not hostile," I said flatly. "It's quiet, legal, surgical." "Why?" That question sat there.
Heavy.
I turned to her, meeting her gaze for the first time. "Because you all never asked what I was building. You just assumed I failed. Every time I stayed silent, you assumed it was weakness. But I was learning, watching, working." She looked down, and for the first time in my life, I saw guilt cross her face. "I always thought you'd turn out fine. Just in your own way. I didn't think you wanted our approval." "I didn't need it," I said. "But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt." She nodded slowly. "I came to ask you something," she said after a long pause. I tilted my head. "Go on." "Your sister's wedding is rescheduled.
Smaller venue.
Private estate this time. Her voice caught a little. She wants to talk to you. She won't say it, but she knows what you did." I raised a brow. "She won't apologize," my mom added. "But she's scared. Of what else you might do." "I'm not going to ruin her again," I said. "I never wanted to. I just wanted to be seen." "I see you now," she whispered. It hit harder than I expected. I stood, walked back inside the cabin, and returned with an envelope. I handed it to her, without a word. "What's this?" "Transfer of property rights. I'm giving the land back to the venue. No strings." "I've made my point." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I don't need to punish people to heal," I said. "I just needed to remind myself I was never powerless." She held the envelope with both hands, unsure what to say. Then she stood. "You should come," she said quietly. "To the new wedding. Just to show her you're still standing." I looked at her for a moment, then simply replied, We'll see. The new wedding wasn't extravagant. No rented estate, no string quartets, no Instagram influencers or diamond-encrusted napkin rings. Just a private garden at someone's country home, a few rows of white chairs, and a smaller guest list, people who genuinely mattered.
I wasn't one of them,
But I showed up anyway. Not for Aubrey. For me. I wore a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy. Just clean, elegant, quiet. I didn't sneak in or make a scene. I walked through the side path and stood at the back, just as the ceremony was about to start. Aubrey was already at the altar. Her new dress was lighter, simpler, almost graceful in a way I'd never seen on her before. She looked tired. Not broken. Just humbled. The officiant cleared his throat. And right then she saw me. Our eyes locked across the crowd. Her expression didn't change much, but there was something in her eyes. A flicker. Not hate. Not even resentment. Maybe something closer to recognition. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. I just gave her a slight nod. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't stay for the vows. Didn't wait for champagne or applause. I didn't need to. Back in the city, things moved fast. The news had picked up the venue seizure incident, though not with my name attached. Articles titled things like "Luxury Wedding Crumbles Under Legal Drama" and "Redwood Estate Mystery Owner Halts Elite Event." But I stayed in the shadows. It wasn't about headlines. It was about closure. About reclaiming the narrative they wrote about me years ago. And it worked. I got a call a few days later from an old professor at Columbia asking me to guest lecture on strategic asset flipping. Then a private equity firm reached out, curious about my methods. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. But the real surprise? My father. He showed up at my office unannounced. Same expensive coat. Same cold presence. But there was something different in his posture. He knocked, didn't barge in. I didn't invite him to sit.
but he did anyway.
For a long moment, he looked around the office. At the clean shelves. The papers. The skyline through the window. Finally, he spoke. I underestimated you. I stayed silent. He glanced at me. I taught Aubrey how to win in public. You learned how to win in silence. Still, I said nothing. I won't pretend to understand everything you've built, he added. But you embarrass me. Did I? I asked, finally speaking. Or did I just hold a mirror up? He leaned back, crossing his arms. You've made your point. Congratulations. That was it. His version of closure. Not an apology. Just a cold nod of respect. And somehow, that was all I needed. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk.
We're done, Dad.
I don't need your congratulations. I built this without you, and I'll keep building long after you're gone. He didn't flinch. He just stood, straightened his coat, and left. And as the door closed behind him, I felt something strange. Not triumph, relief. 3 months later, fall rolled in like a quiet promise. The leaves changed. The air turned crisp. And the chaos of that summer wedding faded into whispers. I didn't return to family dinners. I didn't start group chats or send birthday cards. The truth was, I had no interest in going back to who I was before. But that didn't mean I wanted to stay bitter, either. I was building something new now. Bigger clients. Better deals. I moved out of the Brooklyn apartment and into a loft near the East River. Open brick walls, tall windows, and silence I had earned. One morning, as I was heading to a client meeting, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But I didn't. Hello. Hey, it's Aubrey. Her voice was hesitant. Smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to say, she paused. You didn't have to do it that way, you know? My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Didn't have to what? Prove yourself. You were always smarter than all of us, Mel. We didn't know how to deal with that. That caught me off guard. She continued, her voice more grounded. You didn't ruin my life. You actually gave me a second chance. That wedding, the new one, it meant more because it wasn't about the show anymore. It was real. I stared ahead at the traffic light, unsure what to say. I hated you for a while, she admitted.
But I also started asking myself why I was so threatened by you.
I think maybe I envied your independence. Silence lingered for a beat. Then I asked quietly, "Why are you really calling?"
A breath.
"Because I don't want us to be strangers anymore." That hit hard. Not because I missed her, but because for the first time in years, it sounded like she saw me as an equal, not a shadow. "I'll think about it," I said. And I meant it. A few weeks later, I was walking through a community center in Queens where I'd quietly started funding small business mentorship programs. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to pass on what I'd learned the hard way. One of the women, a single mom starting a catering business, hugged me out of nowhere after a workshop. "No one's ever believed in me before," she whispered. I smiled. I know how that feels. Sometimes revenge isn't about tearing people down. It's about rising above them so far, they have no choice but to look up. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I wasn't the outsider at the table. I was the table, and they'd never forget it. Not because I shouted, but because I left without a word and changed everything.